Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, did you know it's buying season?
Buying season?
Yeah.
In my house, it's always buying season, it feels like, because I got kids around. And
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm always buying my toddler's shoes, or my wife's
See,
always
there you
buying
go.
them.
Right. So it's always
a constant parade of shoes.
But this
you get
is
them
not-
brand new shoes and you
Yeah.
scuff them up 2 days later. I don't understand how that even happens.
But maybe this is not the buying season you're talking about.
No, I don't think it is. No,
Okay.
we're talking about the government buying season,
Yes.
which if you're in government or sell to government at all, you're very familiar with it. We're coming up on the time of year when all those RFPs and RFQs and requests for information are flying over, and maybe you're hopefully going to close some deals. So we have brought back with us Jeff Smith today to talk a little bit more about that. He was with us a few months back to talk about, government heading into this year and what to expect from the new administration. So now we're going to dive a little further in and talk about what's coming up in the buying season. We're going to talk about some of the current administration's plans around infrastructure and how that might impact our channel.
There's a lot of government money floating around, it seems like, right? We've got all these stimulus packages out there, another one on the books potentially. Man, yeah.
Exactly.
So we need a guru. We need Jeff.
We need somebody that understands this world and can give everybody the feedback and the information about how to go out and tackle it and be prepared to win some business.
There you go.
I know working with government entities is not the easiest thing in the world. It's a very slow, difficult process, but it can also be a very lucrative one.
Absolutely.
In the right hands. We'll also talk a little bit about what's happening in the world of SLED as their kind of fiscal year is more or less winding down, and kind of get an eye ahead of what kind of technologies and solutions may make an impact down the road. So all of that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's tech connecting with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, our guest today, Jeff Smith, welcome back. He is the president of True Upside Consulting and frequently works with our Zebra team and Zebra partners. Jeff, welcome back to the show. We appreciate having you. What have you been up to since the last time we talked?
Well, we've been awful busy. We, are trying to help our clients and our partners take as much advantage as possible of the spending and the additional incremental discretionary funds that are coming out through the new administration. We've also been closely following some of the key programs. Homeland Security has released First Source 3, and NIH has released CIO SP4. So two of the big programs that we talked about in the last podcast are out and being actively competed. So it's a really great time.
Yeah.
And see, this is why Jeff's on, because he already said two things there that went right over my head.
Oh, you're not an acronym guy?
I am an acronym guy, but not when it comes to this government stuff. So I'm glad we have someone to kind of help us out with this.
We need more than ever a specialist in the government, yes.
Very much so.
There you go.
Well, Jeff, you mentioned, obviously, you've been keeping an eye on what's happening in the new administration, the funding that's coming out. I think the last time we talked about the, was it the TDF, is that the name of it? The Technology Fund. TMF, that's right. And obviously, a big topic that's been, rattling its way around government is this infrastructure / American Jobs Plan that the Biden administration is pushing hard for. There's been a lot of back and forth trying to, find some kind of bipartisan ground for it, at least to put it through. But even if that doesn't happen, it sounds like they might be able to use the whole budget reconciliation process again to get something through here regardless. So it feels to me like there's some kind of a big infrastructure plan that's going to be happening within the next, foreseeable future, maybe hopefully in the next few months here. And I'm sure that's going to, have a huge impact. So, Jeff, from your point of view, do you see that same kind of likelihood of this is going to pass? And, what components are part of this should be a big boon for our industry, for our resellers, for the IT world?
It's a great question. So currently the Presidential Budget Office from the president or the chief executive branch is at 2.7 trillion is where he believes that we need to invest for this. And the Congressional Budget Office is at 1.8 trillion. So there's a pretty big delta there. And what usually happens is between the executive branch and the congressional branch is they'll meet somewhere in the middle, and there'll be some horse trading or, what's called pork for certain committees and certain programs. But I absolutely believe it'll be passed. It'll be spent over a decade. And I think that President Biden wants to leave his mark as a president that made very, very meaningful program impact and very, very meaningful investments in our country. So I do see it passing. The second question you had is, where's the opportunity for us and our partners? Well, the key opportunities are, there's a huge emphasis on modernizing our nation's schools. So that will obviously impact state and local, and also community colleges. There is a lot of money in there for upgrading VA hospitals and federal buildings, and that will obviously encompass technology and rural broadband. We've always talked about kind of the last mile, or the number of people that are underserved by technology in this country. He wants 100% broadband coverage, and that this bill calls for that. And so under all those things, there's terrific opportunity for us and our partners.
I was reading into it a couple other ones that I thought were interesting and I think would have an impact on certainly our customers in the channel. Strengthening manufacturing supply chains for critical goods. I'm glad to see that was called out there, but specifically the way it's written, and again, don't know that it's going to turn out this way, but $50 billion to create a new office at the Department of Commerce dedicated to monitoring domestic industrial capacity and funding investments to support production of critical goods back here in the States. And we talked in another podcast about kind of the reshoring that is going on.
Right.
So when you think about that, if you've got 83% of manufacturers, which was the one report from ThomasNet saying, hey, 83% of manufacturers are going to try to reshore some of their supply chain. Now you also have the government kind of backing it with some desire to strengthen the manufacturing process. That I think that's going to feed right into a lot of our resellers who are in that, who play in the transportation, logistics, supply chain. There's just going to be a lot of investment, it sounds like, in there as well. Jeff, going back to the other one, because I made a note of it too, the school modernization, and I think that there is some opportunity there. When you think about school modernization, it's across the board on technology, right? It's not just HVAC systems, but it's networking gear and tracking and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely. Anything from lifecycle management for any IT product, and obviously creating virtual environments that students can thrive in. My son just graduated yesterday, as a matter of fact, from high school. And, it was a real struggle this year for the students. And one of the main investments that the Fairfax County School Board made was in a Blackboard collaboration tool. And it just flat out didn't work. Mm-hmm. So enabling virtual learning and enabling virtual classrooms, everything throughout the IT life cycle management piece and enhancing that, there's going to be a lot of money invested in that in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, schools are always one of those, it's so personal because if a lot of people have kids, and so they understand school and the need to modernize that as well. Another thing that it called out that I wanted to throw on the table really early on, because I think this is really important when you think about how, because I know a lot of resellers who don't play in government or whatnot, they try to figure out how to get tapped into it. Well, one of the things that this calls for, if it goes through in somewhat of an iteration that it's being presented, is calling on innovation hubs. Now, I think what I like about this, or what I like about innovation hubs, is the ability for our resellers to connect with other technology professionals and really start embracing some new solutions that are going to be developed out there. I mean, when you look at this infrastructure bill, and it's, a lot of it's roads and stuff like that, but also a lot of it is new kind of, new energy type of, reinforcing that infrastructure and stuff like that. That's going to take some innovation. So being a part of an innovation hub, that's what I would be looking for. If I was a reseller in whatever here in Cincinnati, I'm going to start looking for over the next year or two, if some of this funding goes into regional innovation hubs, you want to be a part of that. Have one of your employees, start going to some of those. You can meet up with people. They have meetings in them. Just see what's going on and tapping into that. Innovation is definitely one of those things that I hope fueling a part of that comes out of this. And that would be one of those areas that you could see some traction, from a reseller.
Well, I think what's important here too is that ultimately this money, once it's out there and it's making its way through over the next decade or so, you're not talking about just government contract stuff. Mm-hmm. We're talking about stuff that will trickle down eventually to businesses and to end users and customers that any VAR might be working with, whether they are involved in government or not. If it's in, again, that whole, like you mentioned, the infrastructure thing, people always think like, oh, it's just about like, roads
roads
and buildings and bridges and power grids maybe or whatever. But no, like, and that's kind of why they're trying to reframe this a little bit as this whole American Jobs Plan, is this idea of like, look, this is something that's going to be expansive and open up a lot of opportunities in a lot of different industries, not just the standard stuff that most people think of. And I think, that could come down to just like a field service, organization, for instance, that, their job is to go out there and manage and service, power grids, or this whole broadband thing. If we're going to expand broadband and make it more accessible for everybody, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for that may not necessarily be specifically a government job, but could be just, a local contractor of some sort that gets to work on that, and could be something that you as a VAR get to go talk to and play with, even if you don't typically have anything to do with the government space whatsoever. So it ultimately can involve you and involve your business, and you should be paying attention to what's happening.
That's it right there. You need to be paying attention to what's happening in Washington. I know a lot of us get turned off, myself included. When you start talking about what's happening in Washington, it's like, really? I got something else better to do, I'm sure. Just tell me what the result is. Right. Sorry, Jeff, nothing against you in the but I think most people act that way. But to your point is, you need to be aware of these things that are happening, because there's opportunities. It might be secondary, tertiary opportunities, but they're out there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, Jeff, let's pivot here and start talking about this whole buying season that's coming up. And if someone is not terribly familiar with the world of government, they operate on their own fiscal calendar. A lot of different companies and industries and organizations do this, but theirs is coming up where Q4 comes up starting July through September, I believe. And so obviously that end of year where you get to this point of there's money laying around that you got to spend it or lose it, which happens in a lot of organizations and a lot of fields, but I imagine even more so in the world of government. So kind of walk us through, what someone should be expecting at this time of year. We're just starting June as we're recording this, and we've got that final quarter coming up. What should we expect, and what should VARs be doing right now to get ready for that?
It's a great question. Let's just talk about just seasonality 101. If you look at state and local, around 60 to 65% of their purchases are going to happen between May 15th and June 30. Because their fiscal year ends in a different space. If you look at the federal IT purchasing, it can be as high as 70%. One thing that's really interesting that I researched in preparation for our talk today is that federal contracting actions year to date are up 20%. So that is a very, very positive sign for what the buying season is going to bring. Secondly, we need to make sure that our partners from a sales approach standpoint have a very strong communication plan with their customers. I like to call them integrated planning sessions, where they're talking to their procurement and program management people that are longtime customers or new customers about what they anticipate in the buying season. What are your key projects? What are the key things that are going to impact agency mission? What are the priority procurements? It's about a communication plan now. And that's for mainly federal. For state and local, what we need to do is make sure that we can execute on the orders and that we're helping them spend as much money as they can before the 30th. If you remember from the last podcast, there's a belief that when state and local closes out, the IT budget year over year will be up 13%. So that means those procurement shops have got to get a lot more contracting actions out and funds awarded and able to take advantage of the money that has flown down from the new administration. So it's about understanding seasonality in your business and customer base. It's about communication, having a communication plan, and it's about integrated planning with your customers. Your sales organization should be taking an incredible amount of their day just communicating with their customers in a positive way and getting as much information as they can.
And I like that. I like the idea of just that constant contact.
Yeah. Yep.
So important at this point where that stuff is moving, that things are happening. But again, it maybe it's not quite at the pace that you're hoping for, that you're wanting it to. But I also know that a lot of times, and this isn't just government, this is in a lot of industries, that when that moment happens where they're ready to go and they're ready to spend, you need to be ready as well. And if you're not and you haven't been in communication, they might very easily go with the next guy who's been keeping in touch with them.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about it. You get that scenario where you've got hundreds. You're one of maybe 100 people that are responding to or trying to communicate and get in on. So some of the tips would be, you need to make sure that your online presence or your marketing strategy is oriented towards government so that you're answering those questions and you have. You don't want the seeds of doubt to be in the procurement person about who you are, what you are, are and how you fit into this particular thing that's being bid on. Communication's critical, and we talked about it last time in the last podcast. Over communicating, making sure that you have your strategy well thought out, well delineated, is critical too. Now's the time to get all that in place, right? You don't want to find yourself a couple months from now, oh my gosh, we got to scramble and get some case studies here, or whatever it may be. Now's the time to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, then, Jeff, then you mentioned SLED and how they're kind of approaching kind of the end of their, buying season in essence. And by the time this podcast comes out, I think we'll have maybe a couple weeks left in the month of June for that kind of planning. So, what should our VARs in that space that are working on the SLED side, what should they be thinking about, to wrap up the month and to start planning ahead for the next fiscal year? What does Q1 of a new fiscal year in SLED look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think Q1 is going to buck normal seasonality trends based on the $500 million that is in the Technology Modernization Fund in the new federal IT budget, along with, if the American Jobs Plan passes, we've already talked about community colleges and local schools are a huge emphasis from a technology standpoint, as well as access to technology. So between now and June, our partners need to make sure that they're communicating that we have a very strong and rigorous operational delivery order management process. We can process your orders in a timely manner. We can get you your gear in a timely manner so that you don't, because of operational inefficiency, you don't miss out on funding. And two, we need to be communicating to them the contract vehicles that are available to them to spend the money. Because even though we may assume that a contracting officer knows that there is a GSA cooperative purchasing program that 28 states, or I think 38 states can use, that procurement officer in Boise, Idaho might not know that, right? And so it's all about delivery order management, operational efficiency, being able to get your orders processed and invoiced so that you don't lose the funding, and then also creating a lot of communication around the contracting vehicles that you hold as a company to ensure that the procurement officials know what they can leverage. And that's how people are going to take care of June.
Yeah. Identifying that contract vehicle, we talked about that before. That's pretty critical. You need to have that delineated in as a part of the process. But, yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then, let's do a little future casting here and start thinking about, maybe, what's going to be a big deal this year as far as any particular technologies and solutions. We talked all about, what could be happening here in the American Jobs Plan, this infrastructure bill, and, what we think the TDF or the TMF rather is going to make an impact as we go forward. But, there's some of that is still kind of, the long view look of, as you mentioned, over the next decade. So maybe there's solutions that we think, this is going to come down the road. We're going to be doing more around this, and these solutions are going to matter maybe 5 years from now. But what kind of solutions, what kind of technology do you feel like is going to make an impact right now this year that our VARs should be focusing on?
I think as a service, right? Being able to take legacy systems and platforms and create as a service models, consumption models that are more efficient than government has today. And whether that be a niche application that does asset management or ID management or credentialing, or something as big as infrastructure as a service, any opportunity that our partners can to take away the lifecycle management of IT products and services away from the government and have them outsource them in complete solutions, even if they're niche solutions, that is where the short-term change is going to be driven. We'll talk later about where I think the long-term changes are, but the government wants to get out of the business of having their own data centers. The government wants to get out of the business of managing cybersecurity. The government wants to get out of the business of lifecycle management of IT services. The government wants to reduce their operations and maintenance costs, right? So all of those things are going to be short-term changes. We all know the government change moves slow in government. Those changes have a lot of momentum. Those types of changes have a lot of momentum. And then behind that, which we'll talk about later, is emerging technologies, which obviously is becoming more and more of an interest, especially the federal government.
Jeff, let's dive a little bit more into that as a service model, because I love the fact that you brought that up.
Recurring revenue.
John and I talk about, talk about, well, and just the whole as a service model, right? You know, the way to make yourself sticky to the end user. And, you know, I never thought about, or to their customer, I never thought about the government. You know, I always imagined, or my perception is the government operates on contracts, right? So I've got this one contract for this year, that's it. Next year, the whole thing's got to go out to bid again, and you know it's the whole rigmarole again. But what I'm hearing from you now is a little bit different. Maybe I'm changing my mind here, that if you can get a government contract with an as a service model, now the government's sticky to you. Is that the case? Are you seeing that? Is it easier for the government to re-up an as a service contract than it is what I would say a project-based contract?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, the interesting thing is it's such a different model because it's more about managing a relationship with an as a service provider than it is managing a technology in your legacy platforms, right? So, but absolutely, we're seeing momentum around help desk as a service, help desk as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, cybersecurity as a service, all the things that the federal government really does not do well, or most government entities don't do well. Most government entities don't do well with help desk. Most government asset tracking, asset management, lifecycle management, managing refreshes, knowing where their gear is, simple things like that. And we're getting to a point now where the aging demographic of the people that are in the IT organizations, as they retire and they get replaced with the new generation of technologists, the only way those new generations of technologists know how to consume is as a service.
Yeah, right.
They don't know how to build a gigantic data center in Stafford, Virginia, and call it, you know, their second home. So I think that the short-term change that we're going to see, and there's already been a lot of momentum behind it, especially software as a service, is going to be these as a service models where less investment is made on legacy platforms and approaches, and more is made on modernization through as a service.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And if we could drill down into one other area, because you've brought it up a couple times around cybersecurity, or I'm gonna lump that into security. When you look at the bill, kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation, obviously there's some funding in the current stage to fund security, if you will. And what I'm hearing from you, Jeff, is that the government doesn't necessarily want to be in the world of security. Is that a particular niche area where maybe if we have resellers out there that are interested in maybe they should put that obviously as part of their offering, to have some kind of security offering around whatever their as a service model is that's important to lump in there, right?
It absolutely is. And cybersecurity spend in the next year's federal IT budget is up, and listen to the number here, 14%. So 14% of a big number is a big number. Remember, the federal IT budget next year will probably be around $85 billion, but underneath that, there's going to be investment in the flavor of $14 billion for cybersecurity. And what happens is, this is an opportunity for our partners to build a bridge with government agencies, because government agencies need more help with cybersecurity. One other thing, data management, data integrity, data security, but they need as much help with cybersecurity as any other part of their IT portfolio. And so if we can bring meaningful expertise and as a service solutions, or really great niche products, we have a new client right now. Actually two new clients in the cyberspace that have some really incredible identity management and also blockchain-based technologies that can enable, in other words, the government is never going to acquire that expertise. Right? They're going to have to get it from industry. They're going to have to get it from people that are used to protecting our Fortune 50 companies and our banking institutions and all those other things. So yes, the spending is up and the opportunity is up.
Yeah, and it's on that point, I think, that there is opportunity there, and you have to have those optics, because I think, Jeff, you laid it out very, very nicely in the sense that the government knows that they can't do these things, and that kind of technology is going to have to come from third party, and it's kind of scary what we're going through with all these attacks that are shutting down meat and shutting down oil pipelines and stuff like that. That's not going away anytime soon. So it's incumbent upon us all as technology solution providers providers to be able to partner up with the right people and offer those solutions along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Jeff, it was interesting you mentioned briefly earlier about asset tracking, that being just one of the various facets of, of potential opportunity out there. And it reminded me of this marketing campaign I've been working on with Zebra and a software partner of theirs that is aimed at, asset management and inventory tracking at the federal level, especially for, government contractors and like Department of Defense contractors. And there was some interesting stuff when I was reading, when I was researching about it, came along. I wanted to kind of read this little point here. It says, Congress has been pushing government agencies for better financial management and improved accountability for decades. As recently as 2021, there was the Congressional Budget Justification Transparency Act of 2021. In May of 2021, new legislation was introduced that would require any component of the Defense Department that fails to pass a clean audit to forfeit 1% of its budget back to the Treasury. And again, to Jeff's point earlier, 1% of a giant budget is a lot of money that might have to go back into the Treasury's hands.
It's a big number, right?
And all for basically just for failing some simple audits of making sure that all of your assets are well documented, have all the correct IUID information, connected to them. And it's stuff that should be fairly simple, but it's robust, massive amounts of inventory, assets, information. And again, that's the kind of thing where there's an opportunity for you to partner up with someone who is well versed in that.
That's a really good
has some
point.
smart technology. This one in particular is around RFID, for instance, but there's great barcoding technology that works in that realm too. And again, it's that opportunity. And the opportunity exists because there's some pressure. And so these companies are probably getting pressure from DOD, who themselves are feeling the pressure, because I believe they've failed like 3 straight audits since 2018.
Oh, really?
And they're getting this pressure to, we've got to get this right. This has to get done.
Got it. Yeah,
or
yeah.
if this legislation pushes through, they're going to have to start coughing up money as a penalty for not passing these audits.
And there's one thing I've learned from Jeff. If there's one thing that a government agency doesn't like to do is lose funding.
Exactly.
So they're going to do everything to protect their pot of gold that they have, right, Jeff? If they
that's how bureaucrats get their powers, budget and title. So
yeah, right.
You're absolutely right. And I hope the legislation does pass. I think it's the right type of legislation to drive IT efficiencies. It's amazing, as much as I love our country and I love our federal government. It's we heard a story recently where a VIP, a 3-star general, was visiting a military base, and his detail lost him on the base. They couldn't find him.
Man.
If you can't find, the 3-star general that oversees the military base, think about how hard it is to find a computer monitor for these guys, right?
Yep.
So anyway, there's definitely asset management. The other thing that creates an ROI from what you articulated is the percentage of operations and maintenance spent on legacy systems and devices versus new investment. And it's anywhere 70 to 80% just to keep the lights on for most government agencies. And so they're never going to be able to get leverage on their IT portfolio for modernization or rationalize these funds if they're still basically paying to keep the lights on stuff that could have been around 10, 15, 20 years, right?
Wow.
Well, and I would think that's where, again, the as a service type aspect would come in and
right.
be a nice way of going in and saying, hey, we're not asking you to give us $12 billion or $12 million even up front to do this for you. We will make this a service thing where you are maybe just paying in incremental amounts over time instead. And you can save some of that budget for the stuff that you need to do simply to keep the lights on and keep in operation and yet still pay us what you need in order to update your infrastructure, to update these critical systems and get you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, we're reached the point where, in my mind, a government entity should not be less savvy and secure and technologically advanced than an average Fortune 500 company.
Yeah, right.
Or even not even Fortune 500 company. I mean, there's plenty of just mom and pop companies around that probably have better IT setups than government agencies do sometimes.
Yeah. Without having to put an RFID tag on the 3-star general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good one, Jeff. That's a good one.
No,
Well,
just to build on that, the Technology Modernization Fund that's being managed through GSA is another well-intended thing that I think reemphasizes what we just discussed. And the agencies have to petition for the funds, and it's Ironically, it's based on three things: likelihood of implementation, which is really wicked smart because the government spends a lot of time and money on technology they don't implement, right? Likelihood of displacing legacy systems and processes, and then three, ROI. And so if you want to go get all these technology modernization funds, you're going to need help from industry to make those types of justifications to GSA. And if you really want the funds, you got to prove to them that you're going to implement them as a part of the petitioning process for the funding. So it's another way for us to build a bridge with our government customers.
Yeah.
Very good.
Great points.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jeff, you've brought up a lot of good stuff today, and you kind of hinted also that we've probably got some talking points again in the future. I mean, I think we already talked about we're probably going to bring you on several times this year because I do want us to kind of follow through the process of a year's worth of government selling and what it's like for our VARs in the government space at different times a year. So I think we'll come back in the future and get into maybe a little bit more of some future casting of technologies that might emerge down the road that we need to be paying attention to. Obviously, at some point, hopefully in the near future, we will have a solidified, plan and a budget that's pushed through here for this infrastructure bill, so we can really get a feel for exactly how much is going everywhere and where the opportunity.
Maybe we'll pick through it a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll try to distill because I'm sure it's going to be a 600-page document or something like that.
We'll find the Cliffs Notes, or more importantly, we'll let Jeff read the 600-page document and give us the Cliffs Notes because it's kind of his job.
There you go. So. All right.
All right. Well,
I'm a legislative geek. So
there you go.
I have to say.
that's well, you've got to be in this kind of role. So, before we move on to our usual recurring segments, let's first of all, as always, thank our sponsors, Elo, Epson, Honeywell, and Zebra, and of course Zebra. Thank you so much for lending Jeff to us for this particular conversation. We appreciate your support of the show. As always, if you have first of all, if you like the show, if you're watching on YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe, leave us a comment, tell us what you think. Not the spam comments. I get the weird spam comments on there sometimes. I don't want those. I want real comments of what you thought about the episode. Give us some feedback. If you listen to us on Apple, give us a 5-star rating review. Any other podcast app, if there's any way to follow, like, subscribe, please do that as well. And of course, if you want to reach out to us, if you have any thoughts on the show, any topics you'd like to discuss in the future, if there's certain things you want us to talk about with Jeff the next time he is on, you can reach out to us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can also email us, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, well, let's wrap up with our recurring segments. First of all, the value to the VAR.
Yep.
As always, I feel like the entire episode was a lot of value to the VAR, but let's kind of wrap it up and distill it down to a clear message here.
There you go.
Which is, first of all, to talk about how we as Blue Star and how Zebra, which Jeff does a lot of work with, how are we helping our government VARs during this buying season? What do we bring to the table for them?
Well, it's all about resources and communication. We want to have an integrated planning session with you and make our partners successful in the buying season. And that's opportunity management for the top 6 or 8 deals that each one of our partners may have. It's also, we'll be extending our hours, I know, for coverage at peak times and making sure that we execute behind the VAR to bring these deals home and knock them home. And the more we communicate, the more effective we're going to be, especially around larger opportunities. And the more that we forecast in a kind of an integrated forecasting model, the more successful Blue Star and Zebra can be for our VARs. And so we want to be, obviously, a pivotal part of our VAR success and maximizing the opportunity in the months ahead.
Yeah, and to Jeff's point there, it comes down to resources. I love that word. It's true. I mean, you need to be able to put resources behind it. And I think what we're bringing to the table, at least from a Blue Star perspective, we have different tools that we can help you with. We have resources. We have Brian Ray, for example, who is our government initiative lead. If you're needing help and just kind of you need a sounding board or somebody to talk to about opportunities at the federal SLED level, we have that capability. Of course, we can tap you into Jeff as well, and Michelle and True Upside if we need to go that direction as well. We have tool sets where we're monitoring bids that are coming out from the government. So we have the ability to tap into that. And if we know what you're looking for, we can put you into that flow as well. So again, we have tool sets, we have expertise behind the scenes that can help you. All you have to do is reach out to your sales rep or reach out to one of the BDMs on one of the manufacturer lines that we have representative, like our Zebra team, and they can help you to connect those dots, because it's really important. There's a lot of opportunity coming out there in the government with the spending that's already on the table and some proposed spending. Not to mention that just knowing how to work within the government is not a bad thing. If you're a reseller, it's yet another part of your pie that you could grow and be stable, because I don't think the government's going anywhere anytime soon. So, it's one of those. It's one of those businesses that it's going to be around for a little while.
I would think so. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Barring a very dramatic change to everything and everyone. Yes.
There you go.
I think we're going to be doing this well. I really don't have anything to add to that. I was going to say kind of similar to you, Dean. Is that, we have a lot of resources we can tap into on the BlueStar level.
Yeah,
we're happy to connect you to the right people. It's the whole no VARs and island. When you get that scary RFQ, that is multiple pages long and filled with all kinds of technical detail. And granted, I'm assuming a lot more about it than other people might. What to expect out of it and what they're asking for. But if you don't, reach out to us. We are happy to put you in touch with the right
Let me give you an idea. Like, if you're going to read a story in your local newspaper or whatever online, and you see that some of the dollars being invested is going to be in, I don't know, car chargers for electric, infrastructure and stuff like that. Hey, look, that's something that BlueStar is interested in as well.
Yeah, let us know.
Reach out to us, and we might have some resources that we could help you navigate that if you see that opportunity come down. Just don't be shy, I guess, when it comes to the government, because I get it. It's like this, we talked about it in the last podcast. It's this monolith. It's like this, what is that? The government, big black, whatever monolith I'm thinking of from 2010.
It's not just black helicopters.
Yes,
and,
right. Yeah. And
black
special
sites
ops
and special ops. Yeah.
You can actually get good opportunities coming out of the government.
You don't have to be SEAL Team 6 to win an opportunity.
Bingo. Right.
Go ahead and snipe the competition.
Right.
All right. Well, hey, let's wrap up with our favorite segment of each week. What's Tech Connecting with you? This is where we get to talk about something in the world of technology, innovation, science that's got our eye, caught our attention this week. Jeff, we'll start with you. What's Tech Connecting with you right now?
Yeah, I took both a strategic and tactical approach for this question to end. I would say what's Tech Connecting with me the most is IT modernization and the initiatives around IT modernization. And underneath that, tactically, it's the emerging technologies that are going to enable IT modernization that we need to make sure that we're prepared to bring to our public sector customers. AI, blockchain, data management, data integrity, data protection, cyber solutions, asset management solutions, a lot of the things that we've talked about before. But at a high level, it's IT modernization. Behind that high level, if you peel it back, it's emerging technologies and as-a-service models that make our public sector IT departments more efficient at what they do with their IT spend. And that's what's resonating with me right now, because we are in that season where we want to claim those dollars. And if we bring those compelling solutions for IT modernization, we're going to get more than our share of the market.
Amen. That's a good one.
Yep,
I love how you tied in your interest to actual business opportunities.
We usually just talk about nerdy stuff that's got our attention, but Jeff's out here selling us on the future. So,
yes, he's being very tactical about it. Nice one, Jeff. But you're right. I mean, we've been talking about blockchain and AI and security and the need for that. The need is real, and the need for us as technology solution providers.
Well, and again, it shouldn't just be something that a tech company is developing and using for us as consumers.
Right.
There's no reason the government can't get involved in this stuff and find practical, useful uses for it that help everybody.
Absolutely. So. Reshore some of that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, bring it back home. There
All right.
you go.
What's Tech Connecting with you, Dean?
You got junk at your house? Do you have junk, just laying
yeah,
around?
as much as we would like not to, yeah.
Do you ever worry about that smashing into you at ungodly speeds?
Not particularly.
Well, we got an issue with space.
Unless my son's throwing a toy across the room for some reason.
We got an issue with space junk. That's what is Tech Connecting with me.
Yes.
And apparently, we've got so much of this stuff. It actually hit the International Space Station the other day. And there's not a lot of damage, I guess, and maybe knocked out, or it hit a piece of what they call the Canada arm, which is like this arm that operates out
Canada.
There. But yeah, and they got some people working on it, whatever. But it was shocking because you hear about this. But here's the one statistic that came out of this article that I was reading. I was like, what? According to this agency, over 23,000 objects the size of a softball or larger are being tracked 24/7 for potential collisions with satellites and the International Space Station. 23,000 objects. So now, I'm sure everybody's kind of heard it, but that kind of put it in perspective. There's a lot of junk. Then that's just softball size or larger. But if you think about it, it doesn't have to be that big at the speeds that it's traveling, whatever in orbit, whatever tens of thousands of miles an hour it's going. There are actually 130 million objects that are up there, up to upwards of a millimeter size or bigger, which apparently is pretty small.
A millimeter can do a lot of damage.
That's what they're saying. Yeah, I mean, you get a millimeter going 17,000 miles an hour. I don't care what you
punch a hole in something.
It's going to poke a hole in something.
Including a person,
there was no debate or there was no answer because I don't know how you go up there. You don't just take a big shop vac up there and try to.
Isn't it amazing that for as little as we've actually been in space, we've still managed to junk up space somehow?
We have. With the first one, I guess, going up there, Sputnik in 1957. So it's taken us, 60 years, and we've just junked the place up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and if you remember it's been maybe about a month, maybe a few weeks back or so, there was something from a Chinese space station that was plummeting towards Earth, and they really didn't know where it was going to land.
They didn't know, So we don't know where that's going to land.
Anybody could have just been randomly killed by a piece of space junk falling out of the sky because they weren't exactly sure.
Yeah, but it was like the size of a bus.
Yeah,
right?
It was a large piece, and thankfully, nothing happened from it. Nobody got hurt from it, but...
So how are we going to fulfill your dream of getting to Mars one day when we can't even get through the junk field, getting out of our orbit?
Well, that's the problem. We go and do all these new cool things, and we don't even think about the practical stuff that we need to clean up behind us. It's like that movie WALL-E.
Yes, exactly.
We're just going to leave. Eventually, we're just going to be like, all right, we're just taking off because we've left too much junk. We'll leave some robots to clean it up, and we'll come back later. We're fine. They'll build skyscrapers out of the junk we've left behind.
Bingo.
Come on.
Yeah. So what's TEConnecting with you?
Well, this is a very popular subject that has suddenly popped up in the last couple of days, and it's funny because I saw it on my neighborhood Facebook page, people talking about it. My wife sent me an article about it this morning, and I had just seen about it yesterday. Amazon Sidewalk. Have you heard about this yet?
What is this now?
So Amazon is proposing a new type of network called Sidewalk that would basically build an external internet infrastructure outside of people's homes in neighborhoods.
Okay.
Where it would be able to tap into some smart devices within your home, like an Amazon Echo, some of the Ring, alarm systems and doorbells and whatnot.
All right.
Some of these interconnected devices, and pull a little bit of your internet into a pool of internet that the entire neighborhood could then use.
Okay.
So any of these bridge devices that you have, these types of devices, rather than drawing on your home internet, could draw on this Sidewalk internet instead, and use that internet to kind of power them and feed them the internet connection that they need without tapping into your home network and draining your resources and speed.
Okay.
In practicality, I get the idea, and it kind of makes sense. I get the idea of having a pool that some devices are drawing from that you need for your home, but you don't necessarily want cluttering up so that you can't watch Netflix at full speed, or be doing your work at home on your computer. I get that stuff, but of course, a lot of people are concerned about what does this mean from a privacy aspect.
Exactly.
What's going to stop
Amazon would be providing the Sidewalk. Is that correct?
Right, okay. Exactly.
Because they've got more money than God.
It's their devices that are right now that are the bridge devices that would connect to it. So they own Ring, for instance, the Amazon Echo, any of smart garage type stuff or whatever they might own. So it would be devices that they own that serve as bridges that basically take, and they said it's very small amounts of your internet connectivity that it would be drawing from, so you wouldn't see much of a difference. But the fact that it would then be able to help connect and power your devices and give them the internet would in fact actually give you more broadband and more space, to play with and more speed to play with.
Interesting.
I like the concept. What's been floating all over social media is how to opt out of this. People are just how to opt out. It's not even a thing yet. And let's be honest, it's something that's probably going to be in very specific neighborhoods. I'm sure it's going to be urban, in cities first. You're not going to just see it in some random suburbs anytime soon, And so it's a long way off, I'm sure, but it is fascinating to me that this is a concept that they've come up with, and again, I see like, man, there's some smart practical ideas behind this, but I totally understand why people are freaking
Some
out
issues
and wondering
as well.
what if somebody decides to tap into that and gets access to my Echo, can listen to everything I'm doing, can give it commands, can open my garage, can turn off my doorbell.
Now we're going to need government regulation, right?
Probably.
There you go.
So this is one of those.
So instead of the Internet of Things, it would be the Internet of Amazon things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it just
That's
all
right,
goes
Jeff.
back to our usual big tech conversation, like how much
yeah.
power should they have, and
Right.
yeah, this is one of those things I feel like may never actually end up happening, or may happen on a very small basis and never get anywhere. But,
Probably.
but it is
Because I'm still waiting for the blimps to deliver us goods
exactly.
that, are
the giant warehouses in the sky.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So anyway.
So. All right. Well, Jeff Smith, thank you so much for being with us. We will definitely have you back probably in a few months to talk about what's next and where we are again. So thank you for your insight today.
Thank you both.
All right. Well, of course, it is unfortunately time for us to unplug. So for Dean Reverman, I'm John Martin. Thanks so much. Until next time, stay connected. Powerful printing should be easy, and that's exactly what you get from Zebra's newest advanced desktop printers, the ZD421 and ZD621. Offering direct thermal and thermal transfer models, these printers build on Zebra's proven and popular past for flexible, secure printing in a variety of industries. Ribbon cartridge, RFID, wireless kit, peeler, cutter, full shift battery, touchscreen, these are just some of the features and options available to customize for any need. With a 2-year warranty and robust service options to maximize uptime, the new ZD series is designed to last. To learn more, check out the link in the show notes or contact your BlueStar representative.